And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So in our last tutorial we set up multiple different weapons and kind of went over how inheritance and weapons and stuff like that worked, and how you can use abstract classes and virtual methods to kind of reduce the amount of code that you have to write to get a bunch of different effects. And this time we're kind of doing another extension on the weapons, but not to the weapons class. But this time we're doing weapons pickups. Alright, so what we have here is 3 pickups for each gun that we created, our RPG, the pistol, and our machine gun. And if we go over the pickup of a gun that we don't have, we get a notifier to ask us to pick it up. So if we hit E, the weapon swaps and a new pickup of our old weapon spawns there. And also, if we fire off our weapon and we go run over the existing weapon, depending on the resolution of the video you're watching, you'll see down at the bottom of our ammo counter, it'll fill back up depending on how much ammo is left over in the weapon. Alright, so basically what we're going to do is we're going to just create our weapon pickup, and the weapon pickup is going to store the data of whatever weapon is inside it, so like the amount of ammo and the weapon type and the model itself. Right. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to open up our base entity script that we created. Alright, so just type in base entity, and what we're going to do is we're just going to add in a couple properties, a new field, and a new function. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is we want to create a property for current weapon, and what we're going to basically make this property do is it's the get method is going to just return our current weapon, and the set method is going to set current weapon to whatever value we set it to, but it's also going to set the transform to be parented under our weapon position, and reset its rotation and all that stuff so that it's actually a part of our model. Alright, so we're going to go public, base weapon, and current weapon with a capital, so we know it's public, and our get is going to be just return current weapon with our lowercase. Oh, and before I forget, make sure this is a lowercase if you're using this naming convention, because if you were to return the property itself, you're going to end up in an infinite loop and your game's going to crap. Your computer's going to crap its little computer pants. So make sure that you return the proper field and not the property itself. Okay? Now in our set method, we're going to do current weapon is equal to value, and then we're going to actually set the transform position and all that good stuff. Alright, so current weapon, we're going to grab its transform, and we're going to set the parent of the transform, and that is going to be called weapon location, and that is going to be the new field that we create right shortly. Alright, and then we're just going to set its position and rotation to be zeroed out. Alright, so current weapon.transform.local position is equal to new vector 3 0.0f, actually even better, vector 3.0, save us typing. Alright, and we're going to grab the transform again, and local rotation is equal to quaternion dot identity. Alright, so that's going to zero out the position locally. So it's going to be parented under our weapon position. The 0 position locally is going to be exactly where the weapon position is, and the identity rotation is going to be the exact same rotation that the weapon position is facing. Alright, so since it doesn't know what weapon location is yet, we'll just make that now. Alright, so I'm going to go serialize field. And protected transform and weapon location. Alright, and then we're going to set that in the editor, and we'll be good to go. Alright, and so we have our new property and our new weapon location transform. So now we're just going to put in an additional method, which is going to help us figure out with the weapon pickups whether or not we already have the weapon and that sort of thing. Alright, so basically what we're going to do is we're going to create a function called hasWeapon. Alright, so it's going to be a public. It's going to return a Boolean value, so true and false, and we'll just call it hasWeapon. And what we're going to do is we're going to pass a weapon inside the function, and it's going to compare that weapon type to our weapon type of our current weapon. Alright, so we'll go with base weapon. We'll just call it weapon. And we'll check to see if the weapon is null beforehand. So if our weapon is equal to null, right? So if you passed something else in, well, actually, if you pass something else in, you'll get an error. But if you pass null in, we're going to check for that, and we'll just return false automatically because it's not the same type. And if it gets past that, if the weapon is not null, we're going to return whether or not the type is the same as our current weapon type. All right, so return current weapon dot get type is equal to weapon dot get type. All right, so we're just comparing the two types together, and if they're the same, it'll return true, and if they're not the same, it'll return false. All right, so that's basically all we have to do with the base entity. All right, so now that we have our base entity all set up and ready to go, let's create our test pickup script, or our pickup script. All right, so we will get rid of the search, and I'm just going to put it under weapons, and we're going to create a new C# script, and we're just going to call it pickup. All right, and we'll double click that and open it up. All right, so basically the way this pickup is going to work is it's going to have a sphere collider on it, and if you enter the trigger, basically, it'll check and see if the player has this type of weapon, and if it does, it'll prompt it to either swap weapons or it'll just automatically add the ammo. All right. So we want to make sure that whatever game object that we add the pickup to has a sphere collider. So we are going to use the require component attribute on the pickup. Right, so above the class, we're going to make square brackets, and in those square brackets, we will type in require component, and regular brackets, go type of, and in regular brackets again, sphere collider. Alright, and then this will just make sure that a sphere collider is attached to whatever object the pickup is attached to. Alright, so we're going to start it with a couple variables, not too many, so that's good. So our first one is going to use the serialize field attribute, so serialize field, and this is going to be private, and this is going to be our base weapon, so this is just going to be the weapon attached to the pickup, and we'll just call it that, attached weapon. Alright, and I'm going to go with, ignore what I just did, we're going to go with a new vector 3, so private vector 3, and we'll call this starting position. Alright, and we'll give it a value of 0, 0.3 in the Y, and 0 in the X. Alright, and this is going to be used as kind of a base position for the weapon pickup and where it's going to be located in the world. Alright, if you noticed, if we hit play and we look at the pickups, they kind of bounce up and down a little bit, right? And the 0.3 is kind of the middle point of that bounce, right? So it's going to go above 0.3 and below it, and just going to kind of bounce around there. Alright, and we're going to go create a public property, and basically we're just going to create a read-only version of attached weapon, right? So public base weapon attached weapon, and our little squiggly brackets there, and we'll make our get statement, and we will just return attached weapon. Alright, so yeah, we're just making a read-only value. That way we can get the weapon that is attached to the pickup and do what we need to with it, but we can't physically assign the weapon. Alright, and so now that we have those, we're going to create 2 more fields, and this one is going to be a private boolean, and it's just going to be called offer pickup. And basically it's just going to be a variable that we use to store whether or not we should be offering the pickup to the player, right? And we're just going to give it the default value of false, because we don't automatically want to show the little message in the center of the screen. Alright, and we're going to create a base entity, and this is also private, and this is going to be called AuthorizedEntity. Alright, and what we're going to be doing with AuthorizedEntity is when the player or any sort of base entity enters the trigger, it's going to be AuthorizedEntity is going to be set to whatever base entity that is, and it's basically it's going to stop multiple entities from being able to pick up the same pickup and getting spammed with the pickup the pickup weapon message. Alright, so we basically just store this so that we have the only base entity that is authorized to actually use the pickup at the time. Alright, so now we're going to create our awake function. Alright, what we want it to do as soon as the script comes in. So void awake, and basically we're going to check and see if the attached weapon is null or not. So if our attached weapon is not equal to null, we're going to do a whole bunch of stuff. We're going to get a Raycast hit called hitInfo, and basically what we're going to do is we're going to figure out where the weapon physically is, and we're going to Raycast straight downwards, and we're going to figure out where in the world the pickup is going to be sitting. Alright, so we're going to get that position, and we're going to add the starting position to it, and then that's where it's going to be floating up and down. Alright, so we're going to do our Raycast now. So if physics.Raycast and transform.position, and our direction is down, so vector3.down. We're going to go out hit info, and this is going to be a little bit different. We haven't used this yet, but we're going to use a layer mask here. Alright, so the way we do that is we're going to go 1, 2 less than symbols, and we're going to go layer mask dot name to layer, and in the name to layer we're going to type in floor. Alright, so what's going on here? Basically the layer mask is going to grab the layer from our layer manager, or the list of layers that we have called floor, whatever layer that is, and it's going to bit shift the number 1 over however many places the layer is. Alright, so if we go in the Unity editor and we go into the scene and we click on the floor, we'll see that the layer here is called floor, and there's multiple layers here. All right, so basically we can set it up so that the Raycast will only interact with this one specific layer, and we have to use a bit shifted value in order for that to happen. All right, so yeah, so basically it doesn't matter how many objects are in the scene, the only one that this Raycast is going to go against is the floor layer. All right, so if we actually get a Raycast, starting position is going to equal our point, so hit info.point plus new vector 3, let's go with 0.0f, let's go 0.5 and 0.0. Alright, so we gave it the default value. If it was just randomly in the scene or whatever, or didn't have any specific position, it would just go to 0, 0. But what we're going to do is we're going to get the hit info point, and we're going to add a little bit to its y value, so we get that little up and down bounce effect. Alright, now we're going to basically get the attached weapon, and we're going to zero route all its positions, and we're going to disable the base weapon function, or the component, I should say. So attached weapon transformed parent is equal to transform, so we're going to parent it under the pickup object. Attached weapon transformed local position is equal to vector 3.0. Right, so it's going to go in the exact same position as the pickup. And the transformed local rotation is equal to quaternion.identity. So, rotation, everything's zeroed out. And we are going to disable the attached weapon. Alright, and why are we doing that? If you go into the base weapon class, so all I did was right click on base weapon, go to declaration, it opens up the script. There is an update function and an OnGUI function. Alright, so when the weapon is in the scene but it's not enabled, these update and OnGUI functions won't get called, so we won't always have the crosshairs being drawn, and it won't be raycasting forward and getting that little swaying motion that we have while we're carrying the weapon. So we're basically just disabling it, so we're just gonna, it's not gonna do any of this, and we won't have to worry about it looking kind of funky. Alright, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the collider of this object is a trigger. So collider.isTrigger equals true. Right? Because remember, we're using a sphere collider, and we want the player to pass through it and interact with it. Next one is we're going to create a function called setupPickup. Basically, what we're going to do here is this function is what we're going to use to well, basically set up the pickup, where we're going to attach the weapon to it, and it's going to do whatever it needs to do to kind of set things up. So a lot of what we did in the awake function is going to happen in the setup function as well. Basically, the awake is going to be if we created a prefab of a pickup, and the setup pickup is what we're going to use when we're swapping the weapons. All right, so we're going to pick up a weapon, and we're going to create a pickup out of the weapon that we were previously carrying and put it where we are standing. All right, so we're going to create a public void function called setupPickup, and base weapon is what we're going to pass into it, just called new weapon. Alright, so basically we only want these pickups to work with one object. It's going to be just a one-time use component. Only one weapon can be attached to it, and if we try and set it up after the attached weapon has already been set, we want to kind of throw an error or some sort of warning to the player saying you shouldn't be doing this, so back off. All right, so if our attached weapon is not equal to null, we're going to throw a debug.log warning, and basically we're just going to say that a weapon is already attached to the pickup, so you need to create a new pickup instead. Alright, so we're just going to say there is already a weapon attached to this pickup. Create another pickup instead. Alright, and then it'll just tell the whoever's programming this stuff that you need to create a new pickup. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to borrow what we used in our awake function. So we're just going to literally grab this and copy and paste it. And in between our if statement and our Raycast, we actually want to set our attached weapon. Alright, so attached weapon is equal to new weapon. Oh, and before I forget, to make sure that we don't move on beyond our little debug warning if attached weapon has already been set, we're going to return. Alright, so you'll notice that with Boolean functions you need to return an actual value. With void, you can just return and it'll exit out of the function. Alright, and so now that we have the setup pickup function going and we have our awake going, just in case it's a prefab, we are going to set up some of the OnTrigger functions. All right, so when the player enters the trigger, we're going to set up our authorized entity while the object is staying inside the trigger. We're going to give it the message if we can. So if the player doesn't currently have the weapon that this pickup has, we're going to display the message. If it doesn't, or if it does have the weapon, we're just going to add the ammo to it. All right, and then when the player exits the trigger, we're going to set the authorized entity to null and offer pickup to false. That way, the GUI message is no longer being displayed, and if there's anything left in if there's any ammo left in the weapon on the pickup, you can come back later and use it again. All right. So our first one is going to be OnTriggerEnter, and it takes a collider, and we're just going to call it other. Alright, so when we enter the trigger, we want to check if authorized entity is null, because if it's not null, we're not going to do anything. But if it is null, authorized entity is equal to our other object dot get component base entity. Right, and we're just going to double check and make sure that the other object actually has a base entity attached to it. So if authorized entity is equal to null, or if it's not equal to null, because if it's not, we're going to keep going. Alright, so if it's null, we move on, we grab it. If it's not null, we move on. Alright, so if it's not null, if authorized entity dot has weapon, attached weapon, we are going to just set the current ammo of our attached weapon to the add ammo function that we created beforehand. Alright, so remember that our add function in base weapon, or add ammo, we take in a number of bullets, we check to see if the number of bullets plus our current ammo is greater than our maximum. If it is, we just subtract the difference from our number of bullets and return that value, and we're going to use that to figure out how many bullets are left over in the pickup after the player runs over it. Right, so attached weapon dot current ammo is equal to authorized entity dot current weapon dot add ammo attached weapon dot current ammo. Alright, so does that make sense, guys? Basically, like I said, we're just finding the difference between maximum and current, and we're going to subtract it from number of bullets and return that value, and then we're using that value and setting it to current ammo of our attached weapon. Alright, so we got, let's say the attached weapon had 15 bullets, and the player's weapon could take 5 of them. The player runs them over. The difference is 5, so we subtract 5 from 15, and we set that value to current ammo. So now it only has 10. Okay? Alright. And then we want to check and see if the current ammo is 0, and if it is 0, we're just going to completely get rid of the pickup. Alright, so if attached weapon.current ammo is equal to 0, destroy game object. Alright, so we're just going to completely take it out. Alright, so next we have our OnTriggerStay function. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to check and see if our authorized entity is not equal to null, and if the authorized entity does not have the attached weapon. And if it does, we're going to set our offer pickup to true, so that the GUI message will show up once we get to that point. Alright, so void OnTriggerStay collider other, and like I said in our if statement, if authorized entity is not equal to null and not authorized entity dot has weapon attached weapon. Alright, so authorized entity has a value, and the authorized entity does not have the same weapon as our pickup. Offer pickup is equal to true. Alright, and next, void on trigger exit collider other, and we're just going to set our authorized entity to null and offer pickup equals false. Alright, so authorized entity is equal to null, offer pickup equals false. Alright, and just to kind of make sure that there's not any issues down the road, we want to make sure that the trigger, or the collider, or whatever object exited the trigger is actually our authorized entity. Alright, so what we're going to do is if other.getComponent base entity is not equal to null. Alright, and we'll wrap those in those brackets. And we're going to do another if statement and wrap this. If other.getComponent base entity is equal to authorized entity. Alright, so we're just checking to see if there's a base entity attached, and if there is, we want to check and see if it's the same component as our authorized entity. And if it is, and it's exiting, we're going to make sure that authorized entity is null now and offer pickup is false. So it's not going to show the GUI message anymore. Alright, and now what we're going to do is we're going to create an update loop, and in the update loop we're basically just going to do the bounce function, and we're going to do that little rotation that we see during the play. So void update, and we're going to go transform.position is equal to starting position plus new vector 3, and we're just going to go 0, and we're going to use function in math. We're going to use a sine function, and in sine we're going to go time.time times 2, yeah, we'll just go times 2, and yeah, we'll go with that, and then we'll go 0.0f. Alright, so 0, sign times 2, and 0. Alright, and then we're going to rotate it slowly, so transform dot rotate, and we're going to rotate just in the Y direction, and we'll rotate, say, like 45 degrees per second. Alright, so 0.0f, 45.0f times time dot delta time, so that's going to be our 45 degrees per second, and 0. Alright, so now when we update with our pickup, it should be good to go. Alright, now we're going to go with our OnGUI function now. Alright, so in our OnGUI function, basically we're going to be checking to see if we're offering the weapon to the player, and if we are, we're going to get some events going, and we're going to display the message in the center of the screen saying press E to pick up the weapon. Alright, so void OnGUI. So first we're going to wrap the entire thing in an if statement. So if we're going to offer the pickup and our authorized entity is not equal to null. Alright, so we're just doing a double check here. We're going to set the skin of the GUI, and basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be setting the label so that the text anchor is middle center. That way we can set a position in the on the screen, and the text will show up directly in the center of it. Alright, so to do that, we'll go GUI.skin.label.textAnchor, or alignment, sorry, is equal to text anchor dot middle center. Alright, and then we'll make our GUI label, so GUI dot label, and we'll create a new rectangle, so new rect screen dot width times 0.3, so it'll start at 0.3 into the screen. The height will be starting 0.4 into the screen, so screen.height times 0.4f, right? So 2/5 of the way down. Screen.width times 0.4, and the reason we're using this value is so that there's going to be 3/10 of the screen on either side of the label, and the label will take up 2/5 of the screen widthwise. And screen.height times 0.1. Alright, that's just a decent value, so it's not going to be like directly centered in the screen, but it'll be slightly above the crosshair. Alright, and our text is going to be press E to pick up, and we're going to have an addition sign and attached weapon dot get type. Alright, so it's going to say press E to pick up, and it's going to grab whatever type our weapon is, and it's going to add that to the message as well. So if we're using a pistol, or if the pistol is attached to this pickup, it'll say press E to pick up pistol. Or if you have the RPG, it'll say press E to pick up RPG, because that's what we called the class. Alright? And if we do hit E, we're going to check and see what the current event is. Alright? So when you're doing input in GUI, the best way to do it is using the event class. Alright, so we're going to make an if statement, an if event.current, so we're just going to grab the current event that's happened, whether it's a key press or whatever, dot type is equal to event type dot key up. Alright, so we're checking to see if someone released the key, and we're going to check and see if event.current dot keycode is equal to keycode dot e. All right, so we check and see if someone released the e key, and if they did, pickup equal new pickup. All right, so we're just going to create a brand new pickup equals new game object. We'll call it weapon pickup, and we're going to add a component called pickup. All right, so we create a brand new object and we add a pickup component right to it, and we store that value. Right, kind of compounded a bunch of stuff here, but you know, once you start getting comfortable, you're going to start doing that a lot more. All right, so we're going to use our setup pickup method that we created up here. So new pickup dot setup pickup, and we're going to grab the weapon from the authorized entity. All right, so if the player hit E, we're going to grab his current weapon and set up a pickup with it. All right, setup pickup authorized entity dot current weapon. Authorized entity dot current weapon is equal to our attached weapon. All right, so we're just swapping them out. We're going to enable our attached weapon, so the crosshair is there and the little subtle sway effect is going to be there too. So equals true, and we're going to completely destroy this pickup. So destroy game object. All right. So basically what this does is it manages, it basically makes it a lot easier to store weapon data with our pickups. So we don't have to worry about creating a specific class to store data. We're storing the weapon right in the pickup. So if you have like 30 bullets or 25 or 27 bullets left in your gun, and you swap it out, and you come back later, the weapon in that pickup is still going to have those 27 bullets, and it's going to be of that same type. Right? So you don't have to worry about like serializing data or any of that junk, because it's all just stored right in the pickup. I think that's what's really nice about this. All right, and it just kind of handles itself. All right, so that is actually it for the pickup. That's it for the class. All right, so we can go back into Unity and we can start setting up pickups with our new class. Alright, so we have, these are our old ones, so we'll just kind of get rid of those, and we're going to create new ones with our scripts. Alright, so we're going to create a brand new game object, so Control-Shift-N, create a new game object, and we're going to drag our pickup onto the game object. Alright, and we want an attached weapon to it, so what we're going to do is we're going to create or grab weapons from our first-person character. So all of these guys that we made in our last tutorial, we're just going to drag them onto the pickups, so we can still use them, and you know, we aren't behind in any way. All right, so first-person character, I activated it, and I'm going to disable my test scripts. You don't have to worry about that. And so we're going to call this AK or machine gun pickup. Alright, and I'm just going to drag the AK-47 underneath it, and I'm going to right click on the transform and hit reset, so it's now in the same position as the pickup, and we'll just move it out. Alright, and like I said, we our pickup requires a sphere collider, and I didn't even notice this, but didn't even think of mentioning it. As soon as we attached the pickup, it automatically added the sphere collider. Alright, so we are going to create 2 more pickups and drag our pistol and RPG onto them. So remember, Control-Shift-N is a new game object. RPG pickup. Drag our RPG under it, and make sure it's reactivated if you have it deactivated. And we'll reset it so the position is right. And we'll do the same thing with the pistol. So pistol pickup, drag our pistol onto it. I have to reactivate it and reset it. And we'll drag it up so it's visible. Oh, shoot, what'd I do? Pistol pickup, move it over here. Alright, and we'll actually drag our pickup script onto it, and same with this. Alright, so yeah, make sure the pickups actually have the script onto it, and to set it up, we're just going to drag the gun underneath it onto the attached weapon. Alright, and one thing we need to do before we hit play is we set up a weapon location on our base entity. So what we want to do is we want to drag our weapon position onto our weapon location transform. Alright, and this will give the weapon a place to go when you go over the pickup. Alright, and before we hit play, we also want to make sure the character has a weapon as well. Alright, so let's just give it a machine gun. So I'm just going to Control D for duplicate and drag it under weapon position and reset the position and drag that back onto our base entity script. Alright, so now they have an AK-47. Alright, so we can go around, we can shoot, and we can swap our weapons out. They're pretty bouncy, I don't know why. And why is the weapon over there? We'll have to go back into our pickup script and see what's going on. Alright, so basically what the issue is here is that we don't want to raycast from our transform position. We want to raycast from our new weapon position because that's where the pickup is actually being dropped. Alright, so we're going to raycast from our new weapon.transform.position. Now the pickup should actually spawn right where the weapon originally was. Alright, so that should fix that problem. Also, you notice that these things were super bouncy and going above and below the ground. So we want to fix that too. Alright, so sometimes these issues happen. And this is most likely because of the amplitude of the sine function. Alright, sine goes from like +1 to -1. So we want to make that quite a bit smaller. So let's just multiply this by, say, like 0.1. And then, so now the amplitude won't be going crazy above and below the ground. It'll be a little bit calmer. Right, so now, if we go back and hit play, things shouldn't look quite as crazy. Shouldn't be as bouncy. See, now it's a nice, more subtle effect. And if we hit E to pick up the pistol, our machine gun spawns in the right position now. Alright, and if we pick it back up, alright, so we can swap our weapons now, and to test out the ammo, we'll just fire off some rounds. We're at 15. So if we run over the AK-47, we should gain our ammo back. Alright, so there should be about 15 rounds left in that AK. So if we shoot until we have 10 bullets left, we should get 25 bullets in our AK-47, and it should disappear. Alright, so we have pickups now. Awesome. And so we can basically store ammo, and we can add ammo to the guns that we already have, swap them out, and all that good stuff. Basically whatever you would want a pickup to do, we can do it now. Alright, so that's great, and that's it for now. So I will see you guys next time.